Alright guys, welcome back to the JellybeanSniper.net NFL podcast. Now this week we're going to do a two-parter. We are going to do an off-season preview before free agency gets started, before people start getting cut. We're going to go through each and every team, a couple of minutes here and there, depending on how much I have to talk about. But this is going to be a two-parter, and today we're going to start with the AFC, because I go alphabetically. A lot of places go NFC first. I don't understand that. I've always gone AFC first. So we'll go ahead and do that. Big news coming into this that I haven't touched on. There was probably something, but I think most of it, especially the Brown situation, I'll just get into when we get to the team. Same with a lot of these things, and I was really hoping we'd have a Peyton Manning decision, but no dice. So, let's just move forward. We'll just jump right into this then, because I don't really have anything else to say. So we'll start with the AFC East. I'm going to do this in order of the division standings, like the overall standings I'm going to go in. So, first off, the first team we'll talk about is the last team we talked about, which is the New England Patriots. Now, what do they need to do during the offseason? God, I can't really... it's easy to say a big play wide receiver, but they won the Super Bowl. It's hard to criticize this team. Yeah, I guess they could use the deep playability, but is that really on the wide receiver? Is that just a throw that Tom Brady isn't as great at making anymore? He attempted it in the Super Bowl. It didn't work. Usually he ends up like overthrowing, underthrowing, whatever it may be. So maybe that's just not the right direction for this, but a big play wide receiver would be something they could use. But whenever they go and make a splashy free agent signing like Randy Moss, it might turn into more exciting regular seasons, but they didn't win a Super Bowl like that. They've always sort of won running the West Coast offense, efficiency, and then, letting the defense do their thing. So Bill Belichick cannot draft a wide receiver to save his life. That's just something he's incapable of. I'm not going to, everybody's got a flaw. And I don't see them going after a Dez Bryant if he hits free agency, or a Larry Fitzgerald. Well, no, wait, Larry Fitzgerald, if he gets released, could be a candidate. But I don't really see them making that kind of move, but that is something they need. I think they could use... excuse me. I think they could use a running back. Shane Vereen's going to be there, but he's going to be the Kevin Falk type character they had early in this dynasty. And I think they'll need another running back to go with that. I don't think Stephen Ridley's going to be back. They already didn't bring back LeGarrette Blount once. Who knows if they'll bring him back this time. It's up in the air. It really... If they can get him for the right price, but if he wants a, $3 or $4 million salary, they'll let him walk. And their defense was pretty solid. This is a really young team, too. This was the youngest team that ever won a Super Bowl, so... defensively, it depends on what goes on with who stays and who goes. If they hold on to Revis, and they can re-sign McCourty, which I think McCourty will definitely be a big one for them, I think they're all set. I think after that, they just need depth. The one player who I am pretty sure will not be there is Vince Wilfork. I think he has seen the end of the road with this team. As much as he is a team leader, the salary he makes versus the kind of play he makes, I just don't think they're going to keep him around very much longer. And I feel like they already held on to him a year too long, which is something that Bill Belichick does not do. So I don't know if maybe later in his career now he's starting to get attached to some of these guys, but I don't think Vince Wilfork will be back. So they might be in the market for another nose tackle. They might be in the market for basically an entire defensive line, it seems. Because if there's one thing they're not good at, and this is why people went crazy over this play call, is they're not very good at stopping runs for no gain. Next up, we'll go to my Buffalo Bills. It's a quarterback. It's a quarterback. They need a quarterback. And the big news coming out of Buffalo was they signed Richie Incognito. I'm not a huge fan of this signing. We all know what Richie Incognito did during the bullying scandal, but he wasn't the only player. He just became the scapegoat of the entire thing. Marquise Pouncey or Mike... Is it Marquise or Mike Pouncey that's on... I think it's Mike Pouncey on the Dolphins and Marquise is on the Steelers. whichever one of the Pounceys did it, they were also named. There were other players. There were coaches. The head coach had to go on. The bullying thing it was an entire organizational thing. It was not just Richie Incognito being a dick. So I don't think his reputation is as bad as it should be, but he's always been known as a dirty player. I remember that from his first stint in Buffalo. There's no guarantee he even makes a roster at this point, but the Bills' interior offensive line was so bad. I mean, Eric Wood is a team leader, yes, but on the field play, not quite there. So going after Richie Incognito, something I can see absolutely where this makes sense, because they need that offensive line to get ramped up, because their offense is basically where all the needs are. They could use another running back, because I don't think CJ Spiller is going to be back. He just didn't fit. He's not going to fit what Rex Ryan does. They want a power running game, and that is not CJ Spiller. Fred Jackson will fit in fine, but I think they need, they have Boobie Dixon, but I think they would, if they could get someone like a DeMarco Murray on a discount, and maybe that's shooting too high, but if you're looking at the top of the free agency class, someone like a DeMarco Murray would fit in fine as far as power running, because they'd be able to rotate him out, but only if they can get him at a good deal, because I don't think DeMarco Murray is... I think he is going to be a little more injury prone. I think he got lucky last year, so he's definitely going to be tired. But getting an offensive line in place, I feel like that is actually a bigger need than quarterback right now, because I think they went 9-7 last year with Kyle Orton, who looked pretty abysmal towards the end. He had his opening few games were promising, and then he sort of went right down the crapper. But I think an offensive line will help everything on that offense. I think their wide receivers, they have good young weapons. They could use a tight end, but I think if they get their offensive line settled, it would let a quarterback succeed there, and it would open it up, and then you could actually see what the weapons are like. As far as the defense goes, everyone keeps tying Revis to this team just because it's Rex Ryan, and I think if they brought Revis in, this would be the scariest secondary in the NFL, because I do think they can take... I think Rex Ryan can get the most out of Stephon Gilmore. And I mean, they could use maybe some safety play, some depth there. But even letting Jerry Hughes walk, which I think might happen, I just don't see him... I don't know, he doesn't seem to be a very big need there, because there's already a ton of linebackers. Either Jerry Hughes or Brandon Spikes will be back, and Jerry Hughes is a better player, but Brandon Spikes would probably come back at a cheaper price. Plus, you're adding in that you're going to get Kiko Alonso back after missing a year. You've got some solid linebackers. The defensive line is the best in football, so I think the secondary could use some help, but I think just bringing in Rex Ryan as the head coach, he'll coach them up. So they're going to be better than they were before, and there's some promising players there. Next up is the Miami Dolphins. Now, this is the hardest team. This is one of the hard teams to nail down what they need, because really what they need is some consistency. I mean, they could use a running back, and maybe Noshawn Moreno can be that player. We don't know. He got injured after, 1 or 2 games? So we don't know whether or not he seemed to be looking good in those first couple games, but you never know what their running back situation is like. Mike Wallace might not be back, but that might not be a big deal. Landry seemed to be going in pretty well as a slot receiver. They could easily move him up the depth chart. And there could be a ton of other wide receiver options out there if they don't like Mike Wallace. So you got to figure if they release him, they're going to pick up somebody else and most likely could upgrade. Ryan Tannehill, it's still up in the air. He's inconsistent, but at least his highs are high enough to make him promising, and his lows are not low enough. He's not Jay Cutler. His lows are not as low as Jay Cutler's lows. His highs are not as high as Jay Cutler's highs, which means he's slightly more consistent than Jay Cutler, which is not saying much, but it's reason to want to move forward with him and hope that he can further develop, because he was getting better as the season went on. So I think the Dolphins, they just need some consistency, and I think that comes down to the head coach. And I have no idea why they wanted to bring Philbin back. This is a team that was a shoo-in for the playoffs at one point. They were playing that well, and they fell to 8-8. They went from a playoff contender to third place in their division. And I just think Excuse me. I just think their head coach will not be back. I don't think he'll be back after the 2015 season. Because I just don't know why they brought him back for this season. I don't know how he came back last season. I really have no idea. But at the end of the day, that's what they decided to do. And that's why they're the Dolphins. And coming in dead last in the division is the New York Jets. A lot of people are linking them to Marcus Mariota. A lot of the mock drafts now have Mariota falling to 6. I think a lot of these mock drafts, whenever I do... This is going to be weird, but this is going to make sense. One of my original series, this became a podcast off of a Madden... Basically, it was supposed to be a Madden franchise Let's Play. Before that, I had one where I was the Redskins and I did a teardown and I was going to move them and this, that, and the other thing. And now what I do when I say a teardown is I will take the team, 100% completely release every single player and just sign street free agents. So basically, I'm guaranteed to go 0-16 the first season, get the first overall pick, and rebuild my team that way. And what I'll do, instead of just releasing every single player, because then you end up with, I don't know, Brian Arakpo being a backup linebacker somewhere because the computer doesn't always make the most sense when they make these signings. I started doing a draft. And I would go through and list each of the teams based on whatever their overall ranking was or whatever in Madden, and then give them the player that was either the best overall or just was the biggest need for a fit and wouldn't be a stretch. And what I would do a lot of the times is I would sort of look at the Bills and be like, okay, they need a quarterback. This team 2 spots ahead also needs a quarterback, but I can justify giving them some other player. So I think some people, when they do their mock draft, are like, well, this team kind of needs a quarterback, but the Jets really need a quarterback, and we want to see Marcus Mariota go there. So let's give them Mariota. I think that's what happens a lot of the time. I don't think Mariota's going to last that long. He's not going to the Jets, guys. I'm sorry. I think he could last until 6, but I think someone else is going to trade in. Presumably the Browns. We'll get to that in a minute, but I don't think they're getting Mariota. So quarterback could still very well be a need. What isn't a need on this team, honestly? Running back? They could use a running back. Offensive line is getting old. Wide receivers? Eric Decker's your number 1. You need a wide receiver. The defense seemed pretty solid, but let's see what happens when Rex Ryan isn't there anymore. I mean, on the offensive side of the line, I mean, they look very similar to the Buffalo Bills, but with less young pieces there. They have quarterbacks, same amount of experience, except Geno Smith was just, whew. I don't even know. At least E.J. Manuel was just boring and wouldn't throw the ball more than 7 yards down the field. But he wasn't throwing 4 interceptions in a game. Geno Smith, just, man, I'm sorry. So don't expect them to make the playoffs this season. As much I love Bowles as a hire, I thought he was the best candidate out there, but I think it's going to take them time. I think they're going to need to get a quarterback. And even if they get Mariota, I don't think it's going to be a one-season turnaround. I don't think he's going to come in and be that type. The problem is, he's one of those players that will need to sit on the bench for a while, and they don't even have a quarterback to sort of transition into that. And who are you going to pick up? You're going to bring Mark Sanchez back? You're going to bring Michael Vick back? Are you going to sign Josh McCown? I mean, there's not even that. Okay, now let's move on to the AFC North. And first off is the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is going to be weird to say, but they need to address defense. Excuse me. Dick LeBeau left. He probably should have been gone a couple years ago, but, you know, legacy. They just need defense. They have an amazingly great offense. They have Ben Roethlisberger, who put up almost 5,000. Or did he put up 5,000? Or did he come just short? I feel like he came just short of 5,000 last year. Let's see, stats. Yeah. He tied Drew Brees with the league with 4,952 yards last season. So he can throw that ball up there. Antonio Brown, they have at wide receiver, and they've been very good at drafting wide receivers. So, I mean, think about it. The number 1 or number 2 from from the year before, Emmanuel Sanders went to Denver and had 1,400 yards. So they will be fine at wide receiver. They arguably have the best running back in the league in Le'Veon Bell. They have pretty good offensive line. I think offensively they are all set. Maybe they could use a new tight end, but I think Heath Miller fits that team perfectly. But defense, I think they just overall they could use some cornerbacks, they could use some linebackers, they could use some defensive line. I think they just need to focus on defense. I don't know if there's any quick fixes, but it is weird to talk about a Pittsburgh Steelers team and say, look, this is what we need. I don't know which one of those is a priority. I feel like it would be, with the way their offense works, I feel like secondary should be the top need. Troy Polamalu, I think he needs to be released. I don't know if he will be, but I think Troy Polamalu needs to be gone. And that's unfortunate because, you know, you hate to see those type of teams go, but that's just how it goes. Yeah, okay, even here it says completely rebuild the secondary. I'm on ESPN, I'm just checking their thing. And, yeah, it's their secondary, I think, just overall needs to be rebuilt. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that we're going to see Troy Polamalu leave, and he might just go the Ed Reed route where he just doesn't get picked up by someone else. But for all I know, he could end up on the Buffalo Bills. I would not be opposed to that. That hair is fabulous. Next up is the Cincinnati Bengals. If I thought any team was going to drop off the most in the NFL, was just going to fall from where they were, I don't think there's very many candidates. I think the Cowboys are up there because I think they're going to have a tougher schedule next season, and their defense, I'm still not sold on it. It's easy to argue the Panthers are going to not finish in first place, but they can improve their record and not finish in first place. It was that bad. But the Cardinals are a big target right there. But I think the Bengals have a lot of regression candidacy right here. That tie helped them. I mean, it ended up a lot of other teams blew their chances, but that tie helped them tremendously. If they had just lost that game, they still would have been the 5 seed, but that tie ended up helping them for most of the season. Bengals, their big need right now, I think, would be the pass rush. Yeah, I know, quarterback, Andy Dalton, but Andy Dalton is at least your quarterback, and I've seen a lot of people say this, Andy Dalton is the perfect mediocrity line. Like, that's just like, he's number 16 out of 32 quarterbacks. He's mediocrity. So, you could improve upon that, but they're a good enough team where they're not going to draft high enough to improve that. You're not going to get anyone better than Andy Dalton this year. If Andy Dalton gets released from the Bengals, he is the top free agent this season. So he's not going anywhere this year. Next season moving forward, it depends on how the season goes on. If they do regress, say they go 7-9, 6-10 in 2015, I could see Andy Dalton gone. I could also see Marvin Lewis gone. The fact that guy has lasted this long, I don't understand. Their defense is still pretty solid, but they do need a pass rush big time. I don't know if Jerry Hughes would be up there. I don't think they need D tackles, so I don't think Ndamukong Suh fits there. But, excuse me. I think the Bengals have a very solid team all around. And it's hard to say whether or not they need, wide receiver depth. It's hard to make that statement just because they had a freakish amount of injuries last season. So, who even knows? But maybe picking up another wide receiver while the getting's good. You might as well grab one, I would think. They seem to have their running back settled. Their offensive line is pretty solid. Their linebacking core is pretty good. Their secondary is pretty good. So I would think a pass rush would help this team tremendously. And I think there's some candidates out there. I don't know if they can lure them to Cincinnati, but I think they have the opportunity to improve themselves and not regress. But I feel like when you ride or die with Andy Dalton, he is mediocrity, but the quality of NFL starters ahead of him is just continuing to rise and rise and rise and rise. In their own division, they have the third best quarterback. So, and luckily it's because the Browns have Johnny Manziel. Andy Dalton, if you're looking in the AFC East, he'd be the starter for the Bills or the Jets. In the AFC South, he would be the starter for any of the teams other than the Colts. In the West, he wouldn't start for any of them. He would be a downgrade over any of them, except you could argue Alex Smith. They're roughly the same player. But I would take Derek Carr over him just for the upside. So in the AFC alone, I mean, you're already looking at near the bottom third as far as starters go. So they're going to ride or die with him, and unfortunately that will be their demise. Next up, we've got the wife beaters, the Ravens. I will just continually call them the wife beaters at this point. The bleach pourers, should that be their nickname? I'm not going to get cute with nicknames. Okay, the Ravens went 10-6. Their secondary was abysmal. No wonder the Steelers put up so many yards. They get to play them all the time. The Ravens and Steelers should. I don't know what their final scores were, but I feel like it should have been 75-60. Should have been the scores of all of those games. But I feel like they were a little bit closer than that. Why am I looking at... I don't want to look at 2015 teams. I'm curious. I want to see what their scores are now. I'm being professional. Hold on. Schedule. It's just defaulting to 2015. They don't have the schedule out yet. 26-6. Yeah, 43-23. They lost. Okay, so... I feel like 43-23 is more representative of what I think these games should have been. Wow, Joe Flacco only had 166 yards passing in the first game. And had 303 in the second game. So, I mean, yeah, the Ravens need a secondary. Their linebackers are pretty good. Their defensive line... The ESPN put up a bold statement saying that they should release Haloti Ngata. I don't know whether or not that's true. I don't know if they will. He's a pretty good player. They were a better team with him than without him, but I think he'll be back, but that could be a need if they get rid of him. I mean, solidifying that. Their offensive line's really good. Their running game, I mean, Justin Forsett and came out was pretty good, but they're going to be in that position. They're going to be picking number 26, looking at someone like a Todd Gurley. Or is Melvin Gordon, is he coming out? I feel like he is. Someone like that, running backs, you're not going to take him at the top of the first round anymore, especially after Trent Richardson. He just ruined it for everybody. But you figure at the bottom of that first round, they could look at a running back. So they're going to have some options. I don't think they're going to go out and get someone like an Adrian Peterson if he's released, or a DeMarco Murray. I don't think they're going to go after the top free agents. But I think in the draft, I think they might take somebody. And I think that would be the best course of action. Their wide receivers, Steve Smith, he was sort of coming back down to earth. I mean, he's getting older. I like him. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to pick up, it's the deep wide receiver class, maybe using a second-round pick, grabbing one of those wide receivers, and sort of grooming him. And worst-case scenario, you got 3 wide receivers set for the future. So, I think they have some room to play. I think this is a Super Bowl contender for next season already, but I really think they need secondary help in the worst way. And if Darrelle Revis, it comes down to, is anybody going to sign him to a long-term deal, or is he just going to keep signing 1 year, $12 million contracts for the next 7 seasons before he retires and just plays on a bunch of different teams? I feel like that's not a bad course of action. If that's the case, maybe he'll take maybe he'll take $12 million to play in the Ravens and possibly win another Super Bowl. He's good enough to solidify that secondary, so it wouldn't be out of the question. But finally, we have the Cleveland Browns. This is the worst team in the NFL right now, and I don't care if they go 9-7 next year. As of right now, what is going on, Cleveland? Now, I'm not going to bash Johnny Manziel for going to rehab. I hope he is there for legitimate reasons. I hope he needs to be there. I hope it is him realizing he has a problem and this is not just a PR stunt and he's going to get some help. Alcoholism is one of those things where you look at the guy who is drinking on the floor at the bar sloshed at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that guy's an alcoholic. But you don't look at the guy who's partying until 3 a.m. every night at the club thinking that guy's an alcoholic. That guy is just as much, if not more, of an alcoholic. I'm not going to sit here and say Johnny Manziel was an alcoholic, but he said it. I wouldn't have called him that before. I would have made that same presumption that he just liked to party too hard. You know, is anyone going to call Gronk an alcoholic? He's doing shots on the duck boats. No one's going to call him an alcoholic. He could very well be an alcoholic. Some people have no control over it. So, I'm not going to bash him for going to rehab. That is admirable. But his on-the-field play left nothing to be desired. And I think quarterback is a legitimate need there. And they do have those first, they have the 12th and the 19th picks. They're the only team with 2 first-round picks this year. I could see them trying to make a play if the Raiders, say, at number 4, are sitting there. They have a lot of needs. They could use that. I mean, everyone's linking him to Amari Cooper. That would be a great pickup for the Raiders, but they could trade back to the 12th pick and probably still get a really solid wide receiver. See last year when Sammy Watkins goes, number 4 overall? Odell Beckham goes number 12. It's an eerily similar situation, so I think the Raiders would be okay moving back and picking up someone else. Excuse me. But the Browns, hey, their GM might be suspended. Picking Johnny Manziel and Justin Gilbert in the first round last year. Obviously, he wasn't doing that great of a job anyways, but I don't know, Cleveland. I don't know. I mean, your defense, they're pretty solid. Build it up a little bit more. Their offensive line is probably the second best in the league behind Dallas's, which got their running game going. They're definitely a running back by committee team, and I think that works for them because they do have that good of an offensive line where they can get away with that. They need a quarterback and they need a wide receiver. Who knows what's going on with Josh Gordon? He seems intelligent enough, but apparently not intelligent enough to quit doing stupid things. And I'll root for him. But get out of your own way, man. Just get out of your own way and you'll be fine. Sorry. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it goes sometimes. These players just blow their own potential. And I think, I don't know if he'll make it. I really don't. But the Browns, you're just you're a dumpster fire right now. I don't know what's going to happen to you. But may God have mercy on your soul. And then we'll move on to the AFC South. Obviously, first place are the Colts. They will probably be in first place again next season. As good as J.J. Watt is on the Texans, he doesn't play quarterback. He might be an improvement if he went to their quarterback position, but he doesn't play quarterback. The Colts, excuse me, have a lot of needs. They could use a solidified offensive line. They could use a running back. I don't want to hear about Boom Herron or Trent Richardson. They could use another wide receiver. Tight end, they're pretty solid on, though. I don't think their offensive line is bad, but I feel like anything could be an improvement. They had no 100-yard rushers this season. Who had the best running game? Boom Herron had 88 yards. Trent Richardson got 79 yards in one game? How the hell did that happen? Okay, against the Patriots in their loss in Week 11, Andrew Luck had 15 yards rushing, and he was their leading rusher. But not as bad as when they got blown out by Dallas, and their leading rusher was Boom Herron with 3 yards. 3. Uno, dos, tres. 3 yards. That was their leading rusher in that game. Oh, I want the box score to that one. How many... And that was a game where, they got blown out, but they put Matt Hasselbeck in there. He was their leading passer. Rushing attempts. 10 rushing attempts for 0.1 yards. They had, as a team, 1 yard rushing. 1. Boom Herron had 7 carries for 3 yards. Trent Richardson had 2 carries for 1 yard. And Tipton had 1 carry for negative 3 yards. 10 rushing attempts for 1 yard. that would be what they need to address. They need a running back. And again, they're going to be picking at the bottom of that round. If the Ravens don't, they could go after Gurley. It seems like a lot of the teams at the bottom of the first round could go after a running back. It's convenient, ain't it? Oh, wow, I looked at it wrong. The Ravens have the 21st pick. They might be going after a cornerback, so Gurley could very well be there. And then the defense, don't even get me started. Their defense needs some work. They play fairly well sometimes. I mean, they shut out Cincinnati. And in the games they were supposed to win, they won. I mean, they went 6-0 in their division? Yeah. They went 6-0 in their division. Their losses were to Denver, Philly, Pittsburgh, New England, and Dallas. And their only wins against good teams were against the Ravens and the Bengals. That's it. I'm not counting Houston as a good team because they went 4-2 in their division because they got to play Tennessee and Jacksonville too. So I would argue if they were in any other division, they might have been under 500. So the Colts, I said it all year, they were not as good as a record appeared to be. They just have someone who I think, if not by the end of this season, definitely by next season, will probably be considered the best quarterback in the league. I think he's definitely top 3 right now. I would say Brady, Rodgers, and Luck, in whatever order you feel like putting it. If I'm adding playoff success, I would take Brady over Rodgers, because Brady has more postseason success than anybody in the history of the NFL. He has more postseason success than anybody. But, excuse me, Aaron Rodgers does not have a ton of postseason success. Andrew Luck, they're definitely ahead of schedule. What is that, 3 years for Andrew Luck? And they made it to the conference championship. They got blown out, but they made it to the conference championship. That's not bad. That's nothing to hang, that's something to hang your hat on. You're getting there. You're better than you should have been. So I think the Colts will be solid again because they play in a terrible division. Next up, in second place, it's J.J. Watt. The Houston Texans. This team needs a quarterback. That's pretty obvious. Wide receiver, Andre Johnson, I think is just year by year, you just never know. Is he coming back? I have no idea. The running game is solid. Arian Foster is one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in the league. And that might be doing a disservice to him. I'm trying to think. You figure Le'Veon Bell, Marshawn Lynch. I'm not going to put DeMarco Murray up there because I feel like in that offense, if you had put Adrian Peterson back there last season, he probably would run for 2,500 yards. Who would I put ahead of him? Le'Veon Bell I would put ahead of him. I'd put Marshawn ahead of him. Not ready to put Jeremy Hill ahead of him just yet. Maybe you could tell me LaShawn McCoy. I don't trust the running back after a layoff, so I'm not willing to put Peterson. See, I'd say he's probably the 3rd best running back in the league. And I would argue that he could easily overthrow the other 2 for the top running back in the league if he had a good enough offensive line. Now, their offensive line is okay, but I think they could solidify a little bit more. But they definitely need a quarterback. They could definitely use another wide receiver. Tight end, I feel like, is an area definitely of upgrade. Defense, it's just a matter of, is Jadeveon Clowney going to be any good? That's the major question. Is he going to be any good? Is Brian Cushing going to be good without steroids? They could use some linebacking help. There's some pieces here, but the quarterback is such a void. Ryan Fitzpatrick he was their best option. Is Ryan Mallett going to come back? Does it matter if he comes back? Does it really matter if he comes back? Do you really think he's going to be the solution? Or are you hoping, best case scenario, he's a Brian Hoyer type? Do you really you don't know? Now, for this team, Brian Hoyer would be an upgrade, and he is a free agent, so it could be Brian Hoyer throwing a ball here, but that quarterback, they went 9-7. They got lucky. I mean, they had a last place schedule. They got the Raiders. They got the Bills. They get the Titans and the Jaguars twice a season. You know, they're going to get Cleveland again. I don't know what division they're playing next season. I believe... Oh, it's the South. Oh, they're playing the East next season. So they're going to get the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bills again. So they're going to have a pretty soft schedule next season. Because in the NFC, I don't know who's going to be the good division. You don't know. It could be the NFC North. They could be the good division. You know, I don't think it's going to be the West again because I think the Seahawks will drop off a bit. When I get into that tomorrow, we'll discuss it further, but I think they're going to, you know, the injuries are going to catch up to them. And I think the Cardinals will drop off a bit. I think the 49ers will drop off significantly. And I think the Rams are just destined to 6 or 7 wins every single season until they cut Sam Bradford and get rid of Jeff Fisher. So I think the Texans could put up another 9-7 season next year, but I don't think it's going to be enough to make the playoffs. And I just don't know what you're going to do about that quarterback spot. Because unfortunately, everyone talks about in the NBA tanking and how that is considered to be doing yourself a favor by being terrible to get yourself a top 5 pick. And everyone thinks it is exclusive to the NBA because it's a star-driven league. But in the NFL, if you don't get a top 5 pick, you don't get one of those top quarterback prospects. And sometimes an Aaron Rodgers will fall to you. Sometimes you get Russell Wilson in the 3rd, Brady in the 6th. Generally speaking, you want to get one of those top 5 picks to try and get yourself the best quarterback in the class. And when you're sitting there at 9-7, 9-7, and 8-8, and 8-8, you're not going to get one of those. You're going to end up maybe with the 9th or 10th overall pick when you have a 7-9 season. And then you're going to get someone like Jake Locker or Christian Ponder. And then you're just going to set yourself back further. So, if I were the Texans, I'd tank. I would tank and try and get myself a good quarterback, but that's just me, and I don't think J.J. Watt would allow it. I feel like J.J. Watt's going to come busting through my wall just for suggesting it, so let's just move on. Now I'm going to lump these two teams together. The Jaguars and the Titans, they're terrible. They're terrible. The Jaguars have young pieces that they can build around. Both these teams have some young weapons at wide receiver, but they don't have the quarterback to maybe get the most out of them. Their offensive lines are pretty... The Jaguars have a worse offensive line. They have the worst offensive line. But the Titans aren't much better. Their defense is... They're very similar teams, and they're both destined to win 4 games next season, so... What do you want for your needs? Get lucky. You know exactly who every single superstar is going to be in each round and draft that person. That is the only way you're going to do it. Unless you put 7 Hall of Famers on the field in your rookie draft class next season, you're going to be terrible. So, no use getting any further into them. Let's move on to the North. The AFC North, which is suddenly looking like it could be completely up for grabs. Now, first off, we'll start off with the Denver Broncos. And the biggest question mark going here, quarterback. Excuse me. Is it going to be Peyton Manning? Is he going to come back? I think so. I don't know, but I think so. But I'm not willing to put money on it either way. And then after that, how's their running game going to look? Well, without Peyton Manning there, and with Brock Osweiler at quarterback, you're just going to put 8 in the box and dare him to beat you. I don't think Brock Osweiler is going to be terrible, but I don't think he's going to be Peyton Manning. And I'm sorry, when you're making your first NFL start, they're going to challenge you and see what you can do. So, Denver, they're smart. They have pretty much a solid team otherwise. If Peyton Manning had played... If we had 2013 Peyton Manning this season, they would have won the Super Bowl. Because they were better all over the place. The Seahawks were worse. The Patriots could have been beaten. They're definitely a team to be exploited. If Peyton Manning had been the good Peyton Manning, they wouldn't have lost that game to Cincinnati, and they, probably wouldn't have lost that game to St. Louis either. So I think they would have had the number 1 seed, and they would have been home, and they could have, I don't know. I feel like if they had good Peyton Manning, they would have been number 1 seed and probably would have won the Super Bowl. But as it stands, they don't have good Peyton Manning. They have decrepit old Peyton Manning. And I think that will hinder this team. I think they could still make a run. I think the Patriots could repeat because I think they have the pieces in place and they're interchangeable enough where the free agency losses won't hurt them. And the NFC, I mean, I don't know. The Packers are going to be a legitimate threat. The Cowboys could be. The Eagles are dangerous lurking there. The Giants, I think, are a dark horse team. You're not going to get threatened by the Lions. You're not going to get threatened by the South. The Seahawks are someone you have to talk to because they were just there. But I think, again, with all those surgeries they're about to have on their secondary, the Legion of Boom could be crippled next season. And I don't know if they make it without any setbacks to the playoffs, they'll be dangerous. But you got to figure there's going to be some setbacks. So I think the AFC is primed, but I think the Denver Broncos have a shot. But that's iffy. That's only if you buy into Peyton Manning's decline being mostly due to that quad injury. And if you look at his numbers, it seems significant until you realize that his decline started 3 weeks before the quad injury did. It started statistically against Kansas City. But before that, they almost lost to Miami. They lost to St. Louis. If Buffalo had a good quarterback, they would have been beaten by them. The San Diego game was honestly, besides Oakland, their most comfortable. And they lost to Cincinnati, at Cincinnati. So, I don't think that quad injury, because of when they're saying it happened, I don't think that was as big a factor as people like to say. So, this will be interesting. I'm just looking at their schedule now. Indy, soft defense. They barely beat. They beat them in the first quarter and then beat them in the first 2 games. The scores are closer than they should be. Barely lost to Seattle. Smoked Arizona. And that was when they ended up with the 3rd string quarterback in Arizona. Then they had the Jets, the reeling 49ers. They took care of their own division, but not that they had a soft schedule, but could have been tougher. Next up, I guess it's a toss-up, but I guess second place would be the Chiefs. Wide receiver. What else do I have to say? No wide receiver caught a touchdown pass this season. Travis Kelce, their tight end, was their leading receiver. 67 catches, 862 yards, 5 touchdowns. After that, overpaid Dwayne Bowe, $11 million due next season. 60 catches, 754 yards, no touchdowns. Alex Smith is going to be safe, but that is ridiculous that you can't get a touchdown pass to one of your wide receivers. Their defense is good. They got to bring Justin Houston back. If not, then he is legitimately the prime pass rusher and will make some team very, very good. So, you need wide receivers, dudes, and you need to re-sign your guys. But you were not the worst passing team in the league, according to yardage. Huh? How bad were some of these teams? Oh, right, the Buffalo Bills happened. So, I think the Chiefs, they look pretty good. And, they get to play the Bills again. They get the Bengals. I don't know what division they get. And they would get the Texans. So, and then they're going to play the NFC North. Right? Is that what yeah, because they play the Lions in London. So, yeah, the Chiefs are going to have a fairly tough schedule next season. So, nothing's going to be guaranteed for them. But I think they could make a run at a wild card spot. Next up, the San Diego Chargers center. Nick Hardwick just announced his retirement. This team went downhill rapidly when Hardwick went down. They may have been winning a couple more games, but they went downhill in a hurry when he went down. They ended up, on their 5th or 6th string center? No one's scouting department is that good to find 6 good centers to get you into the playoffs. So that should be an improved area, because that is unheard of to go through that many centers in one season. They need to find a center. That's not exactly something easy to do. Losing Nick Hardwick is a huge loss. Even if he's not a top 10 center in the league, he's been there, I think, throughout the entirety of Phillip Rivers' career. When you build up that, you look at Jeff Saturday. Is he a great center, or was he just great for Peyton Manning? I think he was a great center. Kind of like I can look at Nick Mangold and say he's a great center. But it doesn't matter how good you are. It depends on how good your relationship is with your quarterback. That's the important thing. And losing Nick Hardwick is going to hurt for this team. But at least he announced his retirement early. I mean, a couple weeks after, a week after the Super Bowl? So they know, going forward, they need to look for the center. I'm sure they were going to look for one anyways. Running back is still a question mark. Brandon Oliver was a nice story, but he cooled off near the end. Wide receiver, I mean, you got to assume they're going to be okay there. Tight end, you got Ladarius Green. Is that his name? They keep saying he's going to break out, and Antonio Gates is like, no, wait, I'm still here. So, I mean, offensively, it's just solidifying that line a little bit. Getting a running game, and again, you're picking number 17. You're probably going to have your choice of any running back if you want it. I don't know if they're going to want it. Defensively, they seem pretty okay. I really, what's funny? San Diego, all I ever heard about was their running game. Okay, right here, the mock draft, they have Melvin Gordon going to them, so, that could be good. I don't know, is Gordon going to be better than Gurley? I have no idea. So I don't know, who... I don't think they have it up yet. I don't know who you go after if you're the Chargers. I mean, running back, but defense, I think their defense... Excuse me. Yeah, I mean... linebackers, I would assume. Yeah. Yeah. I'd say grab some linebackers, maybe. Just address the whole thing, get some depth. Who knows? I mean, Eric Weddle's pretty good back there at safety. So... But this is a good team. They just got decimated by injuries in their center position. And following up, the last team we'll talk about here, the Oakland Raiders. With a good hire in Jack Del Rio. Really good young players. But that doesn't always translate into wins. So I think... I mean, the quarterback position, they seem to be good for the future. They need a running back. They need wide receivers. They need an offensive line. Their defense, I mean, Khalil Mack proved to be a stud. They've got C.O. Moore at the other linebacker position. Cornerback they could use. Safeties, I mean, they got Charles Woodson, but how many more years is he going to play? He's still playing at a high level, but how many more years is he going to play? There's a lot of needs for this Oakland Raiders team, but I do think with the right players picked in the draft, and maybe if you can get that trade with the Browns and pick up some more pieces, some more first-round picks, I think this could be, they went 3-13 after everyone thought they were going to go 0-16. They managed to get 3 wins at the end of the season. Good for them. I think they can get to 6 or 7 wins this season, which would be a step in the right direction. I think they can do that. Their division is going to be weakened, and I think long-term, 3 years from now, if they develop players correctly, if there's some stability, and whether or not they're the San Antonio Raiders by there, I don't care. I think they could be challenging for the division lead. It's a long way away, but I think there's going to be such a drop-off. I've said this before. Peyton Manning might not be coming back at all. Phillip Rivers might be gone in 3 years. The Chiefs might be, who knows what they're going to do. They could be going 4-12 in a couple of years. They could be going 4-12 next year. So I think the Raiders are not that far removed not far away from contending for a division lead. So I think there's a promising future, but you've still got some more bumps to go to get there. So that is my AFC offseason predictions. Tune in tomorrow. I will go over the NFC. It will probably not nearly be as interesting because the NFC is very top-heavy. The AFC sort of had a bunch of teams over 500. It was what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams went under 500. And then the Dolphins were 8-8. So, 10 teams over 500 in the NFC, or the AFC. Whereas the NFC, you had a sub-500 team make the playoffs. You had 6 teams go above 500 and 1 go at 500. So, there's a lot more parity in the AFC. There's a lot more intriguing situations in the AFC to see who's going to be a playoff contender. And the AFC could very well just completely suck next season. So, tomorrow I will go over the NFC. My question of the day is going to be, of all of these AFC teams, looking at it right now before free agency, who do you think is going to be the Super Bowl favorite coming out of here? My money would be on the Patriots at least getting back to the Super Bowl. But I could see the AFC North, either the Steelers or the Ravens, being in the discussion, depending on what their offseason moves are. I can see the Broncos still staying in if Peyton Manning can rebound. But I don't see the Colts, unless the AFC's really weak. I don't see them getting to the Super Bowl just yet, because I think they still need too many pieces. But let me know, who do you think is going to contend for the Super Bowl next year, coming to represent the AFC? And join me tomorrow, where I go over the NFC. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.